Hello everyone watching at home, you're with Adelaide Eternal and we're bringing you our monthly tournament. This time it's Legacy. We are in round 3. You're with Sarven McLinton and I'm in here in the booth with a very special guest. We have Brendan Dobson.
Hi there.
So he has been a mainstay of our Eternal scene, jamming Legacy and Highlander, still looking for his vintage win, I know. So let's maybe get you to tell us about the deck that you're playing on the left. So this is you, and then you're playing against Jeremy Dicker, who's on the right. We'll go over his deck afterwards, but can you just tell us about Elves?
So it's essentially an elf tribal deck, plays a lot of mana acceleration, and then uses natural order to be able to find Craterhoof and kill that way. It can be very resilient and can also be very quick, which is really good in the format.
That's sweet. So what about your sideboard? What about your cool deck choices? I know that you've got a few unique ones in there.
So main deck, a lot of decks run 2 Craterhoofs. I decided to run a Shaman of the Pack and a Renzron Packmaster instead. And sideboard's just to try and figure out what's happening in the metagame and beat the decks that can get me.
And let's have a quick look over at Jeremy's list. So he's on a sneak and show list. Obviously the win cons that he goes for are Emrakul and Grizzlebrand. The issue with Emrakul is that you don't get your turn when you pop him in. But when he's hasty attacking off a sneak attack, having your opponent sacrifice 6 permanents is usually game. He's also got Boseiju in his main deck, which is a shout out to the fact that our meta has quite a few Force of Wills running around in it. And he's got the fast mana of City of Traders and Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal and so on to just let these things go off on turn 2 usually. And he's got a pretty sweet sideboard too, but what do you think about this matchup?
This matchup, it can go one of either two ways. The Sneak and Show tends to not be able to get there, and the Elves manage to through consistency, or you just get smashed, and I've had my fair share of that.
Well, I know that you know the result of this game, but I don't, so this is going to be pretty exciting. Let's go down to the match, and we can see that you've just rolled 11. You're probably on the play. Yeah, that's a 7 from Jeremy. So if you're on the play, I would argue that you're favoured usually, but if he has a hand with the Lotus Petal Ancient Tomb and just does his show until turn 1, it's going to be game, isn't it?
Yeah, no, the Elves just have no chance against the super fast decks of the format. Turn 1 kills it's a bit unfair for Elves.
Yeah, you don't have the Force of Will, and sometimes, when they say Force of Will check, like if you were playing against Belcher or something like that, you're going to have a bad day, right?
Yeah, no, it's terrible. You feel really bad.
So Jeremy is shuffling up. I did see a Flusterstorm in his hand, and I'm sure that he knows, it's his hand with a Flusterstorm in it is basically a mull to 6 already. So may as well go to 6 and try and find a more aggressive start.
Yeah, well, I consistently play Elves in Legacy, so he probably has a good idea of what I'm on.
Safe bet. I did like the fact that our meta was really diverse. We had all but 2 decks were unique. So I think there were a pair of Delvers and a pair of Storm-based decks, I think. But everyone else was unique, so pretty good news for the Legacy meta after the Miracles banning.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. It's really good that you can have this variety and any deck can come out on top.
So, speaking of coming out on top, Jeremy's probably not coming out on top here. He's going down to 5 and he's on the draw. So, let's just say he keeps a hand with a Force of Will and he Force of Wills a critical Heritage Druid or some other key piece from you. It's going to be most of his hand.
Yeah, he's in a bit of a rough spot. The sort of deck that he plays relies on a few key pieces to have, and if he doesn't have enough cards, he just doesn't have the critical mass to get there.
Well, let's hope he gets one with the Preordain. I can see a Force of Will at the front there. He's scrying, and it's probably the old land check. Do I have enough lands to play the game? And it is on top, so that's at least a good sign. So it's Force of Will, Emrakul, and he's got 2 lands and one more card. I didn't see what it was, and that's a Brainstorm on top.
Tell you what, he's got a very nice foiled out deck there.
Oh yeah, that's right. And you've got a turn 1 Deathrat Shaman, is that right?
Yes.
So it's probably, I'd argue I'd want to be on your side for this exchange.
It does, it definitely help.
So I know that. So this brainstorm. I know the brainstorm might end up being a pitch to force of will fodder on your turn 2 or turn 3 play, but he's not really going to be able to counter key pieces. He's going to have to save that force of will for something like natural order that's actually going to kill him.
Yeah, definitely. The brainstorm is probably better off for him to find the pieces that he needs so that he can get out ahead.
So that hand of yours has a Leovold in it. So how have you liked Leovold in testing?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've been playing with it. Moved to the blue splash as well for the first time. And he's really good. He's an excellent Green Sun's target. And just X is 3 and it's hard to deal with.
I love it. So looks like no Green Sun Zeniths, if you draw them, are going to resolve because there's a Spell Pierce in Jeremy's hand and he's really got no other good, nothing else good to do. So he's just drawn that off Gitaxian Probe. He's playing his Volcanic Island and passing the turn. So he's got Spell Pierce up. He's, I would say he's got Brainstorm up, but that's not a play you would make. I'm pretty savage when it comes to seeing bad brainstorms. Jeez. If you're already behind like he is, brainstorming would be bad.
Yeah.
You're just going to stay behind. Got to brainstorm really, really well and sculpt that hand. So that's a Birchlaw Rangers, is it?
Yep.
And Birchlaw is tap 2 Elves to make 2 mana?
Yeah, I've gone up to more of them as well to be able to regularly cast Leovold because of the splash.
Good point. So you actually have access to 4 mana on this turn. I mean, if you had a natural order, which you don't, but this is just to show those at home how crazy hands with a turn 1 Dork and then a Guy's Cradle can become.
Yeah, it helps Elves get out really quickly. So even though they're just playing a very fair game, they can kill like turn 3 pretty consistently.
And I'm going to be interested to see what your decision line is here. I think is the Birchlaw on the stack, and there's just the decision here whether or not Jeremy wants to force it, because obviously the Birchlaw represents like 2 green mana, right? Off the cradle and off tapping itself.
Yeah, well, I think I remember I was in the tank for quite a while on that one because there was a lot of different lines of play with I think I drew another Green Suns, maybe.
Yes.
So there's lots of different things that the Elves can do with that to find different Elves to be able to add lots of mana really quickly.
And speaking of lots of mana, you have 2 off the Birchlaw and the Visionary, access to 2, and then 1 more off the Deathrite Shaman. I mean, it seems pretty good.
Yeah, no, so there's just lots and lots of options at the moment. It makes it very difficult to know what to do.
Yeah, so you've got Green Suns in hand, and yep, so this could be another guy. Oh, yep, so Nettle Sentinel with a 1 green mana floating. I mean, we just saw some Storm matches earlier on, and this is storming out right now.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, especially with Nettle Sentinel, because you can untap it whenever you cast a green spell. You can use it to tap it for mana, and you end up being able to add lots and lots of mana and play a lot of green spells in a turn.
I love it. So Jeremy's really behind the ball here, because although it doesn't look like a very big army to the casual observer, a bunch of 1/1s and 1/2s, Jeremy is under the pressure of a natural order next turn winning you the game.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Just a few 1/1s and Cradlehoof's ability of giving +X, where X is the number of creatures you control, is just really, really powerful. You only need 2 or 3 creatures, and suddenly they're dead.
Yeah. So you're tapping Visionary and the Nettle Sentinel for 2 greens, so the 3rd green. Now it's probably a decision of... Birchlaw only adds 1 mana, of course. Yeah, I got so excited there. Every time I see so much green mana, I think, let's just keep going.
Yeah, it's
not quite as good as Heritage Druid, right?
Not quite. That's the downside of Birchlaw, is that you need 2 Elves to get the 1 mana, whereas Heritage Druid, 3 Elves is 3 mana. But the mana of any color is really, really useful when you're adding these different splashes.
Yeah, so adding that blue or that black seems really good for Leovold. Is this going to be a turn where you actually get to cast Leovold, I wonder? It would be somewhat scary when you've got a Brainstorm in hand.
Yeah, it does make Brainstorm a lot worse.
So this army is building, and the Nettle Sentinels are basically a free mana, right? The 2 of them, they tap for mana, then you cast a green spell, then they untap again, and you get to go to town.
Yeah, that's it. And so as soon as you start adding extra Nettle Sentinels together, you end up being able to just drop your entire hand, and then if you've got a natural order, you just win the game.
So there's some mana for the Elvish Visionary, more draws. So I assume here you're wanting to draw more cards off the Visionaries and then later on decide what you want a Green Sun Zenith for at the last minute.
Yeah, that's it. The more money you get, it's even viable to Green Suns for Cradlehoof.
Wow. Well, I mean, that Guy's Cradle, I know that, Elves players hold off tapping that Guy's Cradle as long as possible. This is a perfect example. I mean, you've got access to 6 mana just off the Cradle alone.
Yeah, it does make some ridiculous amount of mana, and Guy's Cradle is just one of the best cards in the deck by a long way.
Let's hope you don't get blown out by Spell Pierce, though.
Yeah.
So this here is 8 mana, is that correct? So 6 off the Guy's Cradle 7 mana, 6 off the Guy's Cradle and 1 off the Birch Law tap ability. X is, did you say 2?
Yeah, X is 2 there.
So you're going to go down to 4 green mana, and we're going to untap these guys again.
It's excellent that it doesn't have to be a creature or anything. You get to just any green spell untaps.
So he's making the cheeky little play here, just saying, I'm going to try and disrupt your shenanigans by spell piercing this. He knew the spell piercer's value was dropping infinitely fast,
Yeah,
so he just needed to use it up and try and just change that math. I mean, if you see an Elves player thinking a lot about that plays, it probably means they're playing around days, but maybe not spell pierce.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think at that point I just had so much mana. I was more just worried about Force of Will. Just trying to get a critical number of Elves to be able to finish the game as quickly as possible.
So that was that a Dwynen's Elite or something like that, where it makes a token?
Play a single Dwynen's Elite, because then that way it's a really good target for Green Suns, but it's also excellent with Wirewood Symbiote, where you can bounce it and then play it and continuously do that.
Oh, wow. That sounds delicious. So you're casting that order here and getting to untap those guys and then presenting the ability to win instantly here by attacking with a very, very hasty Craterhoof and a bunch of pluses on your guys. But here's the Force of Will. So it's pitching the Brainstorm. You just need that blue card.
Yeah, well, get the Brainstorm.
That's it. So is this going to just be an attack now? No, sorry, you might be able to... No, you can't play the Leovold yet. You won't have enough mana. So it's just going to be a bash. Get to push in with those not summoning sick creatures. Although you see Elves tapping, they can tap for mana off Birch Law, but they can't attack. They do have summoning sickness.
Yeah, and the thing is, half the time Elves win just by attacking with 1/1s and 2/2s, and you never see a Craterhoof, and you just get there.
I love it. The only thing that you don't love is Pyroclasm, right?
Yeah, no, that does hurt.
It's a bad day.
Luckily, that doesn't see a lot of play.
Yes, yep. These niche sideboard cards are not in the main deck. Thankfully. You'd definitely play around Pyroclasm if it was game 2.
Those would be a lot worse if Pyroclasm saw a lot of main deck play.
So you've drawn another card. Obviously, you could cast Leovold and untap your Nettle Sentinels, allowing you to attack for a little bit more. But I assume you're not really worried about some kind of sweeper effect here, so it's okay to commit a bit more to the board.
Yeah, I think at this point you just have to go for it, and even if he does have a sweeper, then that's kind of how it goes.
So you do get to bash for with 2 of those 2/2s, and is Dwynen's Elite a 2/2 as well?
Yeah, it's a 2/2.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big for an elf.
2 mana 3 power, right?
Yeah.
So bashing for 6. I mean, it's solid. Jeremy is on 8, and you don't need a combo here. You just need to attack next turn, right?
Yeah, he's just dead on board.
So the Leovold is turning off shenanigans. A top deck Preordain or some other effect is not going to get him anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's looks like an Ancient Tomb. I think that's going to be game over unless he actually has the show and tell in hand and some way to... No, he'd need sneak attack, and he'd need more mana. So that would be Ancient Tomb, sneak attack, Emrakul off the sneak attack, and he'd probably still die. Just sack some lands and attack for lethal, right?
Well, I think with Ancient Tomb, I think he has enough. It's 4 and 1.
Yeah, so he'd be able to go, the 5 mana required to activate it too, but that would be taking mana, damage off a fetch, damage off the Ancient Tomb. He'd go to 5, he'd play his sneak attack, he'd haste out his Emrakul, you'd sack 2 lands and your 4 weakest guys, and then attack for lethal.
Yeah, it's one of those weird circumstances where attacking with an Emrakul doesn't win you the game.
It's a strange scenario, a strange world we live in right now.
Elves.
Yeah. So he's really going to have to naturally have these cards in hand. I mean, we're talking about the possible outs that he has. I mean, at the end of the day, if he doesn't have it in hand, he's not going to be able to find them because he can't brainstorm. He can't use any card draws in the face of Leovold.
Yeah, and that's it. And the thing is, as you can see here, even just Leovold being a 3/3 adds enough pressure from an elf to close the game out. Anyway.
So he is going to 5, and here's the sneak attack. So this is actually the line we were saying. No way. We were talking about Magical Christmas Land, but here it is. This is really the best possible scenario that Jeremy could have had, which is actually having the cards in hand, and it's not actually going to win him the game.
Yeah, no, it's very unfortunate for him. It just came probably a turn or two too late. And it's also bad that I didn't end up taking that much damage this game, so 15 didn't quite get him there.
Yeah. So keeping your one guy's cradle does give you access to additional mana, which is nice. And you're sacking the guys that don't untap because there's always a chance that you don't actually draw a green spell, right? And then you can't untap them and swing for lethal.
Yeah, that's it. And he's just dead now.
Yeah, that goes to -1 or something like that, right? That was a game. I really didn't expect the exact cards we were talking about having on Jeremy's side. But yeah, as you can see, if that play had been made the turn before, it probably would have been dire straits for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, he probably would have won the game. It's just unfortunate that he had to mull to 5, but got there in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It was a good 5, and it curved out nicely. But looking at sideboards, so Jeremy gets to bring in not much in this matchup, I'm afraid. Engineered Explosives is basically the most relevant card against you.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Just being able to sweep away all my creatures is the most important thing.
And being able to choose EE for 1 or EE for 2 is pretty nice. I mean, there's probably there's no access to a third color of mana in his deck, so it's really only ever going to be sweeping away the Deathrite Shaman and a Birchler Rangers, or it's going to be hitting your Dwynen's Elite and Elvish Visionaries. Either way, he can't get both. So this is where having Pyroclasm is really, really nice in the sideboard. Yeah,
definitely. It goes to show that in a format as diverse as we have, that you can't just have cards in your sideboard for one matchup. You have to have things that are really good against the broad field, which helps out Elves quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this matchup, post sideboard, with the fear of those types of effects and Engineered Explosives and so on, do you play more actively with that in mind?
I've played this matchup a few times, so I ended up putting things in my sideboard for it. And from my experience is that you just have to stop them from going off, and even just a couple of 1/1s or 2/2s will finish the game. So for me, I play Gadok Teague and Caracas.
Oh, delicious.
Which end up stopping them quite well.
So for those who don't know, Caracas does let you bounce a legendary creature. I know there's the old text said a legend or something like that. Legendary player, or just to bounce a legend to their owner's hand. Unfortunately, we can't return legendary enchantments. We can't return Beseiju or
soon to be planeswalkers.
Soon to be planeswalkers. Yes,
that would be good.
Yes, that is going to be very, very interesting. So the and what was the second card you said that you
Gadok Teague.
Gadok Teague, yeah. So that shuts off their sneak attack, and that is basically 4 cards in their deck, 4 win cons in their deck.
Also shuts off Force of Will.
Oh,
so they can't cast that, which ends up being quite good.
Oh man, it's getting better every time we think about it.
Yeah.
These are great cards in Highlander. Every time I see cards in Highlander and every time I see cards in Legacy and I go, why is this not played in Legacy? I guarantee it's probably played in Highlander because it just has that. It's just that kind of an environment.
Yeah, definitely.
But in terms of Legacy, Caracas is really nice because obviously, I know it's Magical Christmas Land, but you can drop a Caracas off your opponent playing Show and Tell and use it to bounce whatever they play.
Yeah, well, my list runs crop rotation as main deck, and then an extra in the sideboard as a way to find my guys' cradles a lot more regularly. So having a toolbox of lands in the sideboard is really effective.
That's a good point. And I mean, in a format like Legacy, which is very, very streamlined, having the ability to have a tutor, something like, imagine if Demonic Tutor was in this format, it's probably not really good. Aside from Storm, it's probably not really good because it costs 2 mana, it's sorcery, it's slow. It's not in this format, obviously, because it's busted, and Storm will have a field day. But when you look at crop rotation, it's a 1 mana tutor, and it gets the thing into play, which allows you to use it immediately. So when you do build your deck, as you've said, as a toolbox, it makes a really cheap instant speed 1 mana tutors into play incredibly powerful.
Yeah, no, it helps consistency in the main deck, but then because the field's so varied, it lets you have a few key cards for key matchups and then regularly see it. It's like playing 5 copies.
I love it. Now, don't go and ask Wizards to unban Demonic Tutor for Legacy because we said so. Where it's just a comparison. It's the only tutor I can think of. The tutor, the actual name. Demonic Tutor. That's where the word tutor comes from, right?
Yeah, no, it would be very, very busted.
Yeah, don't do it.
Storm is bad enough with Infernal Tutor. I have to jump through hoops.
I saw Socrates Stavropoulos play Grim Tutor, a one-off Grim Tutor. He's not even playing Ad Nauseam. It's the new tech. Oh, look at this hand. So that was a Show and Tell in the hand. You've got lands, crop rotation, exactly what we were talking about before. But Jeremy has the very fast hand. I mean, he's got a Show and Tell, and he's got Lotus Petal and a land. I mean, he's able to Show and Tell on turn 2, sorry.
Yeah, and that's always the scary thing, but they just have to be able to get the key pieces that they need all together, and then just win the game.
Exactly. So obviously he doesn't actually have a fatty to put into play because he hasn't just jammed it that turn. But you're starting off with, that's the Quirion Ranger.
So that is, you can return a forest you control to your hand, and then you can untap an elf you control.
I love it. Combo pieces. So for those of you who haven't played as much Legacy, you'll note that sometimes we do tap our dual lands to play spells, leaving our non-dual lands, our basic lands, untapped. Reason being, Wasteland is in this format. You don't know whether Jeremy's playing Wasteland, but you know that it's an easy trade-off to make because you don't need that black mana.
Yeah, no, definitely.
There's all these tiny little edges that you get from the more you play Legacy, the more you find these little, tiny iota of advantage. Because sometimes, the first time that you tap that non-dual land to play your green spell and leave the dual land open with the expectation to cast something later on, and your opponent wastelands you, it's a bad feeling, and you learn that lesson, and you never do it again.
It was definitely an experience learning to play Legacy and not fetching the dual land as your first land.
Isn't that weird?
Very different than other formats.
So here's the crop rotation end of turn, I believe. And what would you find here? Cradle?
So here, I think I want to go for Caracas.
Ah, nice.
It gets it into play. It also gives me a white mana if I need it. So it does fulfill a lot of different duties, especially playing Gadok Teague. It helps with the white mana.
I can just imagine you crop rotationing here, then untapping and playing Gadok Teague, and Jeremy would not have a nice day. But here we go. He's fetched and he gets to cast Spell Pierce on that. And that's, as we were saying, how powerful crop rotation is. It's a legitimate target because once the land is in play, he can't deal with it.
Yeah, and not being able to know what it is that you fetch makes a huge difference.
So you've gone to your turn. You're down 1 land here. You do have the Birchlaw Ranger, but it's not really that great for generating mana unless it's the only land you have. But here's Guy's Cradle. That's good. That's very, very good. And is this a bashful one?
Yeah, I think it's just an attack for one.
And this is an untap. Use the ability to, return the land to your hand. You've floated a green mana, and then you can use the green mana to play something else. Is that a double land for the turn?
Yeah,
oops.
I definitely didn't realize that happened.
That's all right. This is... and then it's going to be another land of the crop rotation.
Yeah, that was definitely a mistake, and neither Jeremy or I picked that one up.
Awkward. It's probably that feeling of when you look at Guy's Cradle, those old borders and it being mono green, it doesn't look like a land. It looks like this amazing enchantment. Like that enchantment from that new set. Oh, is it an enchantment?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Something
Enchantment
like
that flips into the new Guy's Cradle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be very good. There's a reason Guy's Cradle is banned.
Yes, yep.
Or not legal in Modern, at least.
Well, we have a new Cradle in Modern, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, not quite as good, but... Oh, here's the Gaddock Teague that we were talking about. All right. So the Quirion Ranger has been used once this turn, and it no longer has targets because there's no forests, right, for future turns.
Yes, that is.
Oh, but there's a forest in your hand, right? Yeah, here's the Force of Will. I mean, he's got to use it or lose it, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's really hard for him if he lets that resolve. He can't force anything else, so it turns off his sneak attack. It's a very good card in the end.
So
I didn't even end up using Guy's Cradle. So
it
all
all
didn't
balanced
matter
out.
as much.
We'll just imagine the Guy's Cradle was still in your hand and nothing has changed on the board. At least it didn't affect the actual game, the outcome of the game.
That is good.
And here we go. This is 3, and that feels like a show and tell. That's a show and tell.
Yeah,
and
the card
Caracas is already tapped.
pretty good.
Wow, Caracas is already tapped as well. And Leovold. So, I mean, if he... Is that a...
I think it's a Grizzlebrand.
Grizzlebrand. I mean, that Leovold immediately turns that Grizzlebrand off, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, so he can't draw any cards this turn. And if he wanted to pay 7 life next turn, he'd only be able to draw 1 card.
It's one really powerful card. Let's see. Let's see what it is. So going back to your turn, you have Caracas to also. Yeah. Well, obviously we bounce that.
Yeah,
now
just
in that,
bounce.
I mean, in response, do you just draw a card? Like you're not going to win against Caracas anyway. So lose 7, draw a card, and hope that gets you 1 deeper for the next turn to allow you to cast Sneak Attack Emrakul.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ancient Tomb.
It's tough because I think if he lost 7, he knew he'd probably only have 1 turn after that.
1 turn, exactly. So just draw the card and just give you a turn back and then draw another card the next time. So, I mean, Magical Christmas Land, you got to draw a pretty specific... you got to draw an Ancient Tomb and then draw the Sneak Attack
Emrakul.
Right.
Just do it twice. Yeah, I think Leovold's really, really good in this matchup. Turns off a lot of his filtering, turns off his card draw.
Absolutely. So you're getting to just smash in for 5, which is huge. So you're essentially presenting him with 2 more turns to win the game, basically.
Well, now even if he wanted to try and put Grizzlebrand in to draw a card, he'd be on 1, and then he stops him fetching.
Caracas
just
is out.
Puts lots of pressure on.
I think this is why the Omni Show variants are slightly more favoured here, because putting in Omniscience gets around Caracas, and Omniscience lets you cast something, like Burning Wish, or it lets you cast something that gets something else. For example, chaining through your cantrips, and then eventually finding Release the Ants from the sideboard, and releasing the ants all over your opponent's pants.
Well, even just having, if they Omniscience, being able to continuously play Emrakul, because they cast it from hand, they get the extra turn. Even if I bounce it with Caracas, they just get to play it again.
I love it.
So I've lost to that a few times.
Well, that's probably a little bit more elegant than my Release the Ants play.
I feel like Omniscience, though, in the Omnitel version in this matchup is much more favoured.
So there's a large amount of mana. What costs this much mana? Is this going to be one of those crazy ones where you get to play something huge off a whole bunch of mana? Let's see. It's a Craterhoof Behemoth. Actually hard cast Craterhoof Behemoth with an untapped... oh yeah, well there you go. I mean, it's enough. It doesn't matter what's untapped. You just want to bash.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Like 8 mana is not a lot for the Legacy Elf deck to generate.
And so for those at home, when you see this matchup, it looks like Jeremy was far off from winning because of so much going on the board, on the battlefield on the left. But at the end of the day, it was very close. In that first game, he had the exact nuts to be able to go off, but it was just one turn too slow.
Yeah, I think against most other decks that didn't have so many permanents on the field, he would have been fine. Like, most other decks won't have more than 6 permanents on the field. So
the Emrakul would seal the deal.
Yeah.
Speaking of sealing the deals, thank you very much, Brendan. We're going to move on to round 4, and thanks to everyone at home for watching.